Welcome to the Copernicus Project video series, Teaching Science in 5 Easy Pieces. This module focuses on physics. We've formatted the videos so that you can watch them in sequence like a feature film, or instantly drill down to a specific video or chapter that addresses your own area of interest. Because some viewers may be jumping around to various chapters and videos, our introductions contain some of the same orientation information. The easy pieces are the 5 E's that comprise a learning model known as constructivism. Traditional education is teacher-centered, while constructivism is student-centered. It's based on the concept that students learn best when they're actively engaged with their subject matter rather than listening passively to a lecture. Studies show that students learn science best by doing science, not hearing about it. The role of the teacher is then raised from someone who is simply dispensing information to someone who structures activities that improve communication, that challenge students' perceived notions, and that help students build on prior knowledge. In this and in each of the other videos, we show classroom examples of how you can use the 5 E's to get students actively involved in their own learning. Each video is broken into 5 chapters, one for each of the 5 E's: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. You may use the menu function to instantly jump to any classroom chapter focusing one of the 5 E's. Each chapter will be preceded by a brief explanation of how that particular E should progress, as well as the roles of the students and the instructor. The first E is engage. It's all about involving the students in something they are interested in. Ideally, it will be tied to science content to be covered later on in the lesson. During the engage, students first encounter and identify the instructional mission. Here they make connections between past and present learning experiences. They lay organizational groundwork for activities ahead, and they stimulate their own involvement with their anticipation of these activities.
Okay, good morning everybody. Okay, for today, we're going to be going through 2 different arrangements of circuits, specifically series and parallel circuits. How many of you, as by show of hands, would like to play with the Christmas lights at home during Christmas? Okay, see, a lot of you are quite inquisitive. Okay, how many of you have seen your Christmas lights work? Okay, or one of them, let's say one of the bulb gets busted and the rest wouldn't work anymore. Okay, what would you usually do? Deborah?
They throw them away.
Okay, they just throw them away. Who else?
My dad usually takes out every single light bulb until he finds the broken one.
Okay, that will take a lot of time, especially if you have more than 100 lights.
Yeah.
You can engage a student by asking a question, defining a problem, surprising them with an unexpected event, or acting out a problematic situation. This gets a student focused on the instructional mission. It's not unlike the marketing of a product. First, we need to grab the customer's attention. We do that by stimulating a sense of need. Once the student feels that basic need to know, he's motivated to take the steps necessary to satisfy his own natural human curiosity.
What I did for the engage phase of my lesson was to present, I actually did 3 things. One is to present comic strips on electricity, because you can find a lot of funny physics in comics, and the kids were able to relate with these comic strips. The second thing that I did was I gave them a thought-provoking question. Like, for example, the situation that I gave them was, I could prove to them that a 40-watt bulb, incandescent bulb, can actually glow brighter than a 100-watt bulb. So I did that demonstration for them. This is your activity for today. First one is, the objective is to compare current, voltage, and resistance between series and parallel circuits. Since we have discussed about Ohm's law already, we're also going to use Ohm's law in calculating the total and individual currents, voltage, and resistances. Your materials will be, I have provided a multi-tester, connecting wires, power supply, and 3 resistors of unknown values. I have explained to you how to read the values of your resistors, and you also have a guide on your table to help you, kind of like find the value of each individual resistances.
The The second E is explore. In this step, students experience scientific phenomena and materials firsthand. They examine it and they interact with it. As they involve themselves, students develop a personal relationship to the mission. Working together in teams, students build the base of common experience, which will help them in the process of sharing and communicating.
Okay, so let's add it up. 69.7 plus 49.6 plus 45.8. That's 163.1 is the total.
The teacher acts as a facilitator, providing materials and guiding the student's focus. It is the student's own inquiry process that drives the instruction during an exploration.
During the explore phase, it was funny because you would see, at first there was a hesitation again with, who gets to do what. So kind of like on their own, they were able to find, okay, you get to do this role and I get to do this role. You get to be the recorder of the experiment. You get to be the secretary and stuff like that.
Priscilla, this is resistance. This is the exact resistance.
Okay.
Yes.
67 points.
Hang on. You have to
0.6.
read it when it stops. Okay.
67.7.
Yeah, 67.7.
So turn that on. Make sure it's at 9.
You could really see the kids very much involved with the experiment because this time what I really did was to just step back, just look at them, just carefully watch them and observe them. If there were any questions, then that's the time I would definitely go to the kids and help them out. But as much as possible, I really tried my best not to help them in any way, unless it was a safety issue. But the kids were definitely talking to one another. They were definitely collaborating. They were definitely following the procedures at the same time.
The third E is explain. This is when your students, all of them, explain what they found during the explore stage. Language motivates a student to sequence events he experienced into a logical format. Communication occurs several ways: between peers, between the teacher and students, and within the learner himself. Working in groups, learners support each other's understanding as they talk about their observations, ideas, questions, and hypotheses. This process leads to a communicable label, which gives a learner the means for sharing explorations. A common language enhances the sharing and communication. The teacher can augment that common language by providing labels for student findings and events that correspond to historical and standard language. The students' created works, such as writing, drawings, video, or recordings, provide tangible evidence of their progress and growth.
In the explain phase, the students what they did was they presented their results using a table that they made. They wrote the table on a butcher paper and they presented it to the class. At the same time, they also presented their answers to the guide questions that followed after the exploration phase.
Well, all we did was add the first, second, and third together.
Okay, very good.
And there's not much of a correlation here. They're kind of the same, but not really. And same with our resistance. We did the same thing. We just added all three of them.
Okay.
And the only thing that really had a correlation was the current. They were like really similar, and then again we just added them.
Okay. For your voltages, it's all the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
all the way down.
And for your resistances,
It got from bigger to smaller as we got down, so
okay.
Yeah.
Because when you calculated, use complex fractions based on your equations. Okay.
oh yeah.
And then for your current, how did you end up with 0.52 amperes?
We just added it up.
Added it up.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Of course, some groups were not able to get it right, but I always tell them that science is not about always getting it right, actually. And I really discourage them from correcting, tampering with the results. I always tell my kids that it's very important that you keep it the way it is and present it to the class, because it is only through their mistakes that they could actually learn too. It is only through their misconception that I could actually help them out at the same time.
The fourth E is elaborate. This is the application portion. Can the students take what they've learned and apply it to a new and different area or setting? Here, the students are encouraged to expand on new concepts and make connections. They apply their new understanding to the world around them. These connections often lead to further inquiry and new comprehension. This can lead to that special aha moment in a student.
What do you think are the resistors doing to your total voltage? Nora?
You're dividing them out amongst the three.
Alex, can you come up with an equation for the total voltage just by looking at your numbers?
You would do R1 plus R2 plus R3.
What about for your current?
Total current would be I1 equals I2 equals I3.
What do you think are the resistors doing to your total voltage? Okay. Just a review of Ohm's law. Kristen?
They're inversely proportional. So as the resistance goes up, the current will go down.
Okay, very good. So you can see it from the values. For example, you got R1, 68.5, and then you have 0.13 amperes. For the elaborate phase, I asked them to do two things. I asked them to present a list of common resistors that they can find in the home. At first, they were kind of like, okay, what do you mean by that? But eventually, when I rephrased the question, like, give me examples of household appliances that has resistance in your home. So that's when they were able to answer the question. So they came up with answers like toaster, the oven, the refrigerator, air conditioning units, and all that stuff. So they were able to do that. That's one of the things that I asked them to do. How many of you have experienced this? All of a sudden, when you turn on, let's say, for example, your hair dryer or your hair blower, the fuse blows up, and then everything in the house just turns off. Okay, so most often when that happens, okay, that's actually a safety precaution in your house. Okay, the fuse breaks so as to make sure that the current, okay, would not exceed the total or the allowable current inside the house. So it's actually your circuit breakers and your fuses are actually meant or designed to actually save, okay, your house from the entire house circuit to actually burn up, okay? Because this is one of the reasons why people would lose their homes because of short circuits, okay? When there's too much current entering in the entire house circuit, okay, and they don't have any fuses, or it's just that the wirings become brittle, and so the wires come in contact, they heat up, they create a spark, and before you know it, fire starts. So this is one application for series and parallel circuits. But the most important part here is that you remember that your electrical appliances at home are actually arranged in parallel circuits, so that if you don't use your hair dryer or your hair blower, you can still use the refrigerator, you can still use your television. It's not in a series circuit. That if your mom doesn't use the microwave, your TV will not turn on, or the flat iron will not turn on. So the house, okay, our homes are wired in parallel connection, okay? And this also helps the kids think thoroughly. It helps them learn the concepts more. It's not just also learning the concepts, but at the same time, they learn more about themselves, how they learn better, and they really get to appreciate the class more because it's a lot of fun. They get time, they have the time to collaborate with one another, work with each other, think about other students' thoughts. In a way, it also provides them a non-threatening environment that enables them to be comfortable with each and everybody and then with the entire process of the class itself, which is really a good thing for them.
The fifth E is evaluate. This starts with the student's self-evaluation. They reflect on their own learning experience. It's also an ongoing diagnostic process that allows a teacher to determine if the learner has gained a good understanding of concepts and knowledge.
A fuse is connected in series with the power source so that the entire current passes through it. The current through the fuse is calculated using the equivalent resistance.
If the fuse in the circuit is rated as 15A, the 20A current would exceed the rating and cause the fuse to melt or blow and cut off current. Fuses and circuit breakers also protect against the large currents created by a short circuit. Without a fuse or a circuit breaker, the current caused by a short circuit easily could start a fire.
Evaluation and assessment can occur at all points during the instructional process. Concrete evidence of learning becomes apparent as students, teachers, parents, and administrators communicate. This evidence of progress guides the teacher in further lesson planning.
We were given the three resistances, that's 68 ohms, 1.1 times 10 to the third ohms, and 10.2 times 10 to the third ohms.
Great.
And then we plugged it into the equation, so it would be 1 over our total would be 1 over 68, 1 over 1.1 times 10 to the third, and 1 over 10.2 times 10 to the third.
Okay.
We did the mathematics, and we ended up with 6.76 ohms.
Because you had to take the reciprocal.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well done.
The evaluation process is continuous and gives the 5E model a cyclical structure. It's open-ended and open to change. You'll probably find an ongoing loop where questions lead not only to answers, but also to more questions. This can become a jumping-off point for even greater enrichment of the student's education. Instruction is driven by both a predetermined lesson design and by the inquiry process itself.
It's not just about testing. It's not giving them a quiz or a chapter exam. Evaluate phase is more of a formative assessment where you try and see where are my kids at right now. Did they really learn the objectives of the lesson or not? If not, then you have to go back and strengthen the concepts that they need to learn based on the objectives of your lesson. So like, for example, if you have to do problem solving, you give them 5 problems, okay? And by the way, you should have explained or you should have shown or modeled to your students how you solve these problems during the explain phase. Then during the evaluate phase, if your students, let's say, get to answer only 3 or only 2 out of the 5 questions, then you have to redo it again with them. It's a formative assessment. It's not a summative assessment.
Let's try and see and use all the other equations that you have. Okay, let's summarize everything here now for the formulas. Okay, you've got I current, total would be I1, I2, I3.
So benefits of inquiry teaching in the classroom. I would look at it 2 ways. One from the perspective of a student and another one from the perspective of the teacher, myself. Well, from the student's point of view, this is when you really get to do science, because science is not what you do to kids. Science is what kids do, okay? Because, I mean, there's so many problems in the classroom and constraints. But for the part of the students, I really think it's getting all their senses engaged in learning something. It's not just looking at it. It's not just seeing it or